So everybody, welcome to the Skift Meetings Future of the Event Industry 2023 Virtual Summit, the first Skift Meeting event of the year. I'm Miguel Neves, the Editor-in-Chief of Skift Meeting. Delighted to be your host today. Joining me as well are my colleagues Andrea Doyle, Senior Editor, and Angela Tupper, Branded Content Editor. You might have noticed we're on a slightly different platform today. This is a new thing for us, so hopefully you enjoy it. It's quite simple. You just have the feed and the chat, so we're keeping it really focused, which I think is also a bit of a theme today. Make sure you add your questions, comments in the chat. We really welcome them always. And as you can see, we'll bring the best ones on the screen and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. I want to thank our sponsors who make it possible for us to offer these free events. Please visit WebEx Events, formerly Socio, Kaltura, and Art in their brand showrooms, which are on our website. And we'll add the links in the chat during their sessions as well, so you can find them easily. Thanks to DJ Graffiti, kicking off the event with some sonic inspiration and musical therapy is always amazing. Lizzie Williamson from 2 Minute Moves will be joining us as well for a little bit of wellness and activity, so we're not just sitting down for a couple of hours. And of course, on our side, we would love you to join our newsletter. You can subscribe to our daily or weekly newsletter on our site. You can also access all our reports for free, which are also on the site. And we have webinars and future events coming up. So make sure you sign up to be a part of those as well. We can't do this alone, so don't hesitate to get in touch. If you have any feedback, any thoughts about how we can improve this, there is going to be a survey at the end. So please make sure you fill that. It's super important for us to get this better. So the fourth edition of our virtual summit, the future of the event industry, focuses on uncovering what lies ahead in the meetings industry and events industry as well. DJ Graffiti already kicked us off with some great questions to the audience, so we've already gotten started. But this is all about forward-thinking meeting professionals, brimming with expert insights and up-to-date predictions, and good best practices from industry leaders. We have big thinking planners at the forefront of innovation, sharing how they create the future. And we're going to start off with the first expert speaker, who is Eric de Groot, the managing partner and meeting designer at My Meeting. And we're going to be talking about designing meeting experiences that meet business needs.
Please welcome Eric de Groot, managing partner and meeting designer at My Meeting, in conversation with Miguel Neves, editor-in-chief at Skift Meetings.
Eric, thank you for joining us today. So happy to have you with us.
Hey, Miguel. How are you doing?
Where are you today, Eric?
I'm at home. I should have been in Madrid, but I was tested positive on COVID.
Okay. That is a shame.
That was a bummer. Yeah.
Because you're supposed to be in Madrid launching your book, right?
Yes.
And then Barcelona as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's one of the great advantages of virtual summits, that we can still have you with us, even though you tested positive for COVID. So sorry to hear that, but so happy that you are able to join us anyway.
Thank you.
So you've just written this book together with your business partner, Mike van de Vijver, and you have an incredible bio. You started designing meetings in 1992. And one of the fun things that I noticed in this book was that you mentioned how many meetings you've been a part of, which over here it says 1,080 as of September 2012, and you've designed 728 meetings. That is an incredible. It's incredible that you've kept track of that, but that's an incredible number. So hopefully we're looking to kind of gain a little bit from your expertise as well. So appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.
So you've designed all sorts of meetings and events, and I know you're a big believer in face-to-face meeting in person. We're not doing that today. We're virtual, but horses for courses. Why do you think it's so important for us to meet face-to-face as humans, as event participants?
Well, Miguel, our system is equipped to pick up all these signals that we send out. We're talking about communication, right? So the whole goal of meeting is to communicate, and our system is really well equipped to pick up all these hidden signals that we send out as social animals. And then I'm talking about micro expressions, these little things, facial things that happen when people react, and you can't hide them, but you can train to see them. And even if you're not trained, you will pick up really quickly what's going on. We're talking about smell, we're talking about hormones, body language, even, let's say, territorial positions that people take in rooms is telling a story. John sitting next to Bruce. Okay, what's going to happen? right? There's information hidden in there, and all this information works best under one condition, which is proximity. And you remember the first kiss with the person you're with right now, the first one, right? There was that sacred moment that suddenly you knew it's gonna happen. She's gonna kiss me, right? Maybe a minute before it actually happened. There was magic, there was chemistry there. So where did it come from? She didn't tell you, but she somehow radiated that message to you, and you radiated back. Yeah, let's do this. And that is that again. It's all about proximity. So that's why we have to be together to really understand what we try to communicate to each other.
Yeah, the virtual kisses aren't quite as effective. So I'm sure we have a few audience members who will agree that proximity and this idea of being in person is super important. But okay, we come together when we can and when we should, and that is great. But not all meetings are good or effective meetings, right? And I think you write a lot about this in the book. Do you have a shorthand kind of idea of what defines a good or effective meeting?
Yes, of course we have, and you might make a distinction between good and effective. Effective meaning the meeting will have an effect. The meeting will somehow generate a change in behavior of those who attended the meeting in the world after the meeting. And that is, in businesses, is of course very important. You don't go to a meeting, or you don't spend money and time in a meeting to entertain your attendees. That's not the goal of any organization. So what we do as designers is, in the diagnosis of what we should have in the design, we talk about actions. What do you want these people to do after the meeting? And that is what the dialogue should be about at first, at the very beginning. So what do you want your colleagues to do differently? And then, as soon as you've defined this very specifically, then somehow you design backwards and say, okay, if this is the case, now what do they have to learn? Do they have to learn a certain skill? Do they have to get some information about something? Do they have to learn other people? Or do they have to have another kind of attitude? And that helps a lot in exactly designing these experiences, because those answers matter. And what we see is that many meetings focus deliberately only on the information that has been transmitted. And in a way, the remote culture that we developed over the past 2-3 years in the pandemic has made that bigger. We think that meetings are about transferring information. It's good. It's okay. We're doing a fine job, you and me right now, I think. But it's not enough. It's not enough to make a meeting really effective. And yes, a meeting can feel like being really good, and the program can be smart, but in fact, you have to measure the result after a couple of weeks. Yeah. So I heard you advocating and saying, well, there will be a poll after this meeting. Okay, what are people going to say? They're going to say, we liked it. Now, are you happy if they liked it? No, you're not in the entertainment business, right? You're in the business of creating a result. So after a couple of weeks, you can ask, so what did you pick up? What did you do differently? And then you can say, okay, the meeting has been great.
Yeah, great point. And of course, we do appreciate the feedback, but as you say, you can only really measure impact if you ask for that feedback later on, right? You need to let people as well apply that.
Of course, I'm not saying you shouldn't do this. Of course, it's nice to know whether the atmosphere was good, there was energy, there were new ideas. But for a business meeting, you need to focus on, are people doing stuff with this? Yes or no, right?
So one of the things you mentioned that I wanted to expand on a little bit, and we have a few people in agreement. Karen Hartline saying, what do you want them to do after the meeting? So many people have skipped this vital step. So you talked a little bit about really diagnosing or understanding what businesses or any organization wants to do, what they want the events, the impact that the event, they want the impact to have, really.
Yeah.
So could you tell me a little bit about the step of sort of diagnosing or understanding the issues that you're trying to solve?
Yeah. Well, this is, and that's not a coincidence. It's quite often about the communication culture that an organization has. Now, let me give you an example. Just a couple of months ago, I worked for a big oil and gas company here in Europe. And they had problems with silos, all these people working in different places and not taking each other very seriously. So in the first stage of the design, we talked on board level with them. And I noticed that in a way, they wanted their people not to be an audience anymore, because they have business goals. They don't want these silos anymore, because they want to make a transformation into being a more sustainable company. So they needed to have everyone on board. So I said to them, in a way, what you say to me is that you want your people in that meeting, you want your people to be players instead of an audience, right? You want them to be active, not only listening. And they said, yeah, that's a good diagnosis. And then I said, and that is an example of how that influences what you're actually going to do. I said, now, if that is the case, is it then a good idea to go to a conference center in which people will sit and watch a stage in fixed seating? That's not coherent with your idea of them being players, right? And they said, yeah, you might be right. And then I said, now let me propose. I give you a stupid idea maybe, but why don't we go to a sports arena and have them all on the floor, the actual pitch? They said, well, that sounds different. And they did it. So actually, we went. Yeah, it was amazing, and it was such a strong message to everybody there. This is not about us listening to the board saying what we have to do. It's us being the players in this organization, and that gave such a tremendous boost to the energy in the room, to how they cooperated in the meeting already, cross silos. We did all kind of exercises. Yes, there was content there. There was a presentation there, but there were loads of games, gamification. There was so much else. So,
that's fascinating. So what I think I'm hearing you say is, because you did a kind of a deep diagnosis of the problems with the company, so these silos, these teams that are working independently and not really communicating, you brought them together in a sports arena rather than a stage or a theater with a kind of setup. And I think that Kim Meyer in the comments here said that, there's benefits to coming live, but if people just sit in a passive audience, that also is just a broadcast from a podium. So I think in a way you're answering that question, right? Sometimes if you can go deep, and kind of get to those problems, then you can come up with creative solutions. So I love the point that you're making, that you really have to understand the issues before you can get to these creative solutions.
Yes. Yeah. Listen first. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we don't have too much more time, but I wanted to cover a little bit of something that you mentioned in your book, which is really reasons to hold a meeting. And you mentioned 6 precisely. I wanted to kind of understand why these 6, and feel free to mention all 6 or just kind of pick on why why you figured out a number. And why is it important that you identify the reason to meet? Is it just to, save on money, like avoid costs, or why is it important that you identify reasons?
No, it's we try to analyze why holding a meeting. As a meeting being a form of communication, you make a choice. Let's meet. We can give you a phone call, or we can send you a video. No, let's meet. Now, why do people do that? And why is a meeting then an appropriate form of communication? Now, that is, in our view, for 6 reasons. Of course, networking is big. People want, if you read a newspaper or if someone sends you a video, you won't network. You have to have a meeting somehow. Learning is a good reason to meet. Learning works better when you're learning together than learning on your own. So there's a necessity to meet. Motivation is good. I mean, if you get motivated as a group, it works a lot better than being motivated on your own. Decision making, obviously, you don't make decisions on your own. If we're talking about the corporate field or the association field, the business field, people do that together. Alignment, thinking in the same way about things, that is a need to be together. Now, finally, sometimes meetings are just a ritual, which is good. We are human beings. We celebrate New Year. Why? There is a reason, just because we're human beings. Now, that is interesting that you mentioned this, because the landscape of all this has changed pretty dramatically. And that is why the book is important. Because if you want to improve things, you have to realize that some of these reasons do not really work well in remote circumstances. Networking is not particularly working out really well online. I've never met someone that invited me, come to my birthday or whatever, let's meet again online. I mean, that you don't become friends online, right? That doesn't work. Learning, however, yes, you can pick up loads of information. There are all these platforms where you can really experience skills as well online. Alignment is not really working well. I haven't seen many online rituals either, really good ones, that really bonds people together, that they feel this is part of my culture. That doesn't work. However, decision making works pretty good online. It's pretty clean to do it online. Now,
Okay.
if you want to improve, then the book will help you, because you can pick one of the 40 chapters, and then if you say, now I want my networking face-to-face to be really better, then go to the chapter about networking, and we'll give you an in-depth advice about this.
Perfect. So the book, I love how the book is prepared so that you can jump into whatever bit that you need to. So I wish you lots of success with the book. One last question that I wanted to jump to. You mentioned these 6 reasons to meet, but do they, is one more important than the other, or are they just, and can you combine them, or what is there a ranking of these reasons?
Yeah, that's interesting, because that's the question that we ask in the beginning. When we sit together with communication people and board members, we say, okay, in our view, these are the 6 reasons. Can you tell us which one is the most important one for this meeting? And then they always pick a few. They say, okay, and that's a little exercise, divide 100 points over these 6 reasons, and they get into a really good discussion about this. Really interesting. Oh, the board member A says, no, this is about networking, and B says, no, sorry, this is about learning, man. We need to align people here. So that is a really good exercise, sir.
Absolutely. Kim in the chat says, I've asked attendees what the most important reason for attending a live event is, and the answer is the cocktail party. Well, sometimes it is, right?
that is in terms of a business environment. Are you willing to sponsor a cocktail parties all the time? No, I think not. You want to have results, right?
Yes, absolutely. Eric, fascinating conversation as always. Thank you for joining us today. I want to repeat the name of the book. Here it is. It's called Meetings by Default or by Design. It's available on Amazon, I think, all over the world. I wish you lots of health. Hopefully you recover quickly and you can continue with your promotion of the book. And we'll keep talking about meeting design. As you know, it's one of my favorite topics. So wish you all the best. And
thank you.
Thank you very much. And next up, we're talking about creating high-value experiences on a note. Hold on. We are not talking about that just yet. We're talking about a different session. We're talking about virtual events as lead generation machines. Don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss this next session.
Bye-bye.
Please welcome Roy Kaufman, Vice President Growth at Kaltura, in conversation with Angela Tupper, Branded Content Editor at Skift Meetings.
Hi, everyone. I'm here today with Roy Kaufman, Vice President of Growth for event tech company Kaltura. We're going to discuss a topic that seems to divide a lot of people in the industry these days, and that is the future of virtual events. From what Roy is seeing, they're turning into lead generation machines. Thank you for joining us today, Roy.
Thank you, Angela. It's great to be here today.
Before I jump into my questions for Roy, I just want to remind the audience that you can pose your own questions in the chat, and a member of the Kaltura team will be on hand to answer them. So, Roy, over the last 2 years or so, the value proposition behind virtual events seems to have shifted. For most of the pandemic, the focus was really on maximizing reach, getting to as many people as possible. But now it seems to be much more on precision targeting of potential customers. Why do you think virtual events are becoming lead generation machines, as you put it?
Yes, thank you for the question. So I think there was a huge transformation in the events world in the past couple of years. And people and companies got more sophisticated in their approach towards virtual events. I think the main breakouts is into two. One is the economical change, which a couple of years ago or 2 years ago, we had COVID. So everyone basically went virtual. Then gradually people went back to physical events. And now in the recession and inflation that we're seeing in the markets, people are actually much more sensitive about budgets. They're much more sensitive about seeing ROI from what they're generating in the investments. Hence, we're seeing more transformation towards virtual events. On the other side, there is the tech aspect of it. And the event technology has huge evolvement over the past few years. We're seeing digital experience that are much more advanced than what used to be in the past. The ability to get data granularity and measure the impact of the events has been far more advanced than what we've seen a couple of years ago. The ability to create smart workflows, to scale events, all of that are basically driving more and more people towards events. And the fact that they're moving towards events is also the ability to have better engagement with their customers and connect that to actual business and not just general brand awareness. And that's how they connect it to the return on investment that they want to see, how much revenue is being generated from those type of marketing activities.
Right. So, I mean, if we're entering this leaner period in terms of corporate spend, as you mentioned, how can marketing teams show that their virtual events are actually delivering ROI? Are there any specific data points they should be tracking?
Yeah, so obviously, there is always the things you can measure and the dark funnel, as we used to call it, on things that are obviously there, but are less measurable. The things that you can measure are always the impact of the reach of the people that you're getting with, the registrants that are actually exposed to the content of the event, the ability to do a demo of the product or actually sell the product within the event audience, the ability to share email communication with relevant content, etc. Then obviously you want to drive all of these into the marketing funnel, which would relate to the ability to generate MQLs from event, meetings from events, and obviously pipeline and deals eventually. And you would also be able to measure it from a standpoint that you know how much an MQL or a meeting with a prospect would cost you, in the open market. So you can actually take that cost and translate it into a value of the outcome that you're generating in the event, calculate all of this together, and then the outcome would be the income or potential income you would generate from the event, and you divide that from the actual event cost, which also has several attributes around the tech, around the sponsorship, around other stuff that you want to bring in, and that's how you get the results of the ROI. And then there is also like things I hear when we're running on our personal events. I'm talking, to salespeople following our events, and I always hear that many of our events and the ability to have prospects and customers within those events actually triggered conversations of existing opportunities or pipeline that is already in the queue. So it was not necessarily sourced by the event, but definitely triggered conversation that eventually led either to a deal or maybe to increase more components or add-ons within an existing deal size. And that's definitely an add-on that you can put on top of the contribution of the actual event that is less measurable.
Those are great points. You got to think about the comparison of what those leads would cost if it were an in-person situation. And you also have to think about ones that are moving further down the funnel, not necessarily just new leads. Great points.
Right. Just one more comment. One more comment on that. We tend to see that generating event registrants tend to be cheaper, in the open market when you're going into your cross channel than just generating leads for a demo or for a free trial of the product. So this is also something to take into account, that when you're running an event, you're actually going to generate leads at a cheaper price because you provide valuable content to the people. And they would tend to register more. They're more likely to register than just to some kind of a demo or a contact sales campaign.
Right, something more explicitly salesy. Totally makes sense. One of the pain points, though, that I keep hearing over and over is that registration numbers are down. What are your top tips for targeting your audience and then keeping them engaged?
Yeah. So again, I think it has something related also to the digital transformation we're seeing as well. If in the past, running a webinar program or even an event program was something that was done only by the very large companies, you had to have a decent, size of marketing team or company marketing budget in order to do it. Now the tech capabilities and the amount of variety of solutions there are out there, and also from an educational perspective, the ability to understand the value you can generate from those programs is much more advanced. Hence, almost any company, any startup, any company size can definitely have its own webinar program. And what happens is that we actually have an inflation of digital webinars and virtual events all over the place. And people are getting tons of communication around that. That became one of the major channels, for communication with prospects and customers, for education, etc. And it's very overwhelming, when you're in the market for me, for instance, as a marketeer, I get all the time marketing emails and invites to webinars and events. So you get overwhelmed over time. And the idea is really to understand how you can differentiate yourself, how you can create a unique experience that can put your brand up on top of the general communication, and also always ensure you provide valuable content, valuable insight, share your own story. People are not aware about your personal story. This is something unique to yourself, and you can always differentiate yourself if you just share your knowledge and your best practices. So that would always be good. The other thing, in order to maximize registrations, is obviously to test. You need to test all the time the various channels of demand generation. There are multiple, obviously, and each one of them works differently. But the ability to A/B test different channels and to reach new audience through those channels is very, very important to have it as a mindset, and also as an event strategy, and not just a single event. Because many times I hear people say, "Yeah, but this is just one event." But when you look at it as an event strategy, you test something on event that is happening now that you will learn for the next time you're running your next event. So over time, you will be more advanced, and you will be able to generate better results. So it's important to look at it from a strategic perspective and not just on a specific event.
Right.
The ability, the ability to include external speakers into your communication is critical. We're seeing two things. First, having external experts brings more attention and more interest in the event. And the ability to engage those people with your event and to expose your event to their network is super valuable. You get the social proof, you get like the social exposure. And we got many registrants to our event just from bringing, external sponsors and speakers. And we were surprised how happy they were to join and speak for our event. And that's a big advantage. Also, we're seeing on the advertising side that sharing those speakers, their logos, people tend to really get appealed by logos they recognize and hence register to those events. So that was also a very successful tactic for us when we did the demand generation campaigns. Lastly, is communication through emails. I have to say that we're in 2023. Email communication is still super successful. we were able to build a whole content strategy per the event programs that we run or the webinar program that we run. And most of the registrants came from those, because those are basically our data related to our database, which is already engaged customers, prospects that have high interest in Kaltura. Hence, those were heavily, those were the largest chunk that we were able actually to drive as registrant, and then also the most qualified one in terms of transforming them into actual event attendees.
Right. So you want to be really smart about how you communicate with that distribution list, because you want to keep them and you want to get them engaged. Great
Correct.
points. And with the speakers, you know, their network is your network, and even the logos probably add some credibility to your brand as well when people see logos that they recognize.
Exactly.
So those are really great tips for the pre-event and the live event period. What can you do post-event to ensure that the live attendees, as well as the registrants who never showed up in the first place, both stay engaged?
Correct. So that's actually very interesting, because we also learned a lot in the past few years about the post event. It's not trivial in the sense that, you know, you work so hard in the event, and you run the event, and then the event ends, and that's, you know, you did it, you finished, and then you move on. And many times you drop the ball, and you don't really think about the ability to still squeeze the lemon and maximize the impact that you can still generate from the event, even after the events end. So I'll start by saying that the most important component here is, in my perspective, sales and marketing alignment. The ability to connect sales teams to the marketing event and work together to understand the engagement that we got during the event, and to be able also to populate this data into the CRM in order for sales to be able to reflect to that and create personalized messaging and communication post the event. We've seen great success with that, because that's you know, something that people would highly respond to, because they've attend or registered to the event, and we collected a lot of data about them during the event. So that was a great intel for our sales team to understand what interests those people, etc. So this is obviously very, very important. The other part is might be obvious, but I find it to be not very you know, trivial for some teams, is the ability to actually monitor and measure the post-event marketing funnel. Like, you know, we've ran the event, we know how much registrants and attendees we had during the event, but then how much engagement did we get during the event? How much of that actually converted into a marketing funnel, and be able to contribute or attribute to the event component the actual outcomes in the marketing funnel was a bit more complex for some teams. And that's very, very important, because at the end of the day, as an event professional, first, you want to have a great experience, but that's not enough today. You want to be able to go to your manager, you want to be able to go to the market and say, hey guys, look, I had the most amazing event. And if you don't have the ability to measure that and monitor that post the event, you don't have the proof to show the numbers and understand how that can work. So that's also a very important one. Obviously, the communication component, and be able to reuse this event as a lead generation machine even after the event ends, right? Keep it as an on-demand site that people can go on and learn and get knowledge and get valuable insights. Also, when the event ends, is a very, very important component. I see live events that when they end, that's where the event ends. We're running our events as a full year, and evergreen content that we reuse later on for case studies, for white papers, for digital campaigns. Whatever we're doing with the event is just a baseline for all of our content communication throughout the year, even afterwards. And that's the way we're getting more efficient, and we're maximize our ability to use our content through the event.
Well, those are such great tips, Roy. Thank you so much. We're running a little over time now, so we have to wrap up, but I really want to thank you for sharing your insights today, Roy. Next up, we're talking data and new audience priorities. But first, we have a short wellness break by Lizzie Williamson of 2 Minute Moves. Enjoy.
G'day there, it is so good to be here with you on the future of the event industry. If you're doing a lot of sitting, your body can get a bit tight and achy. Also, your brain can struggle to stay switched on and focused. That's why we want to take 2 minutes and get your body moving. So we're going to start by dropping your head down and just looking down, letting your shoulders drop. Let's go. Drop down. Then come on up and roll those shoulders back a couple of times. Doing that again, drop down. Coming on up, that little micro break really helps to bust any kind of screen fatigue. Now we're going to reach one arm up and then the other one there. We hold on to so much stress and tension in our body. So we want to lengthen and extend it out, reach on out, stretch it out there. 2 more of those and 1. Now you're going to pretend that you're rowing a boat. Pull it in. Great little way to check in with your posture. And also connect with your core muscles. 4 more. Row it in. 2 to go. And 1. Now, start to kick one leg out. Bring your toes up towards you, as high or as low as you want to go. Nice stretch out in the back of your hamstrings. Will get really tight. You're doing a lot of sitting or a lot of standing. Stretch it out. Nice little move to remember in your day. But now we want to get this energy and flowing a little bit more. So we're going to go a little bit faster. And if you can, you're going to bring the elbow down at the same time. Drop it down. Whatever kind of twist works for you. 4 more. 3, 2, and 1. Now you're going to pretend that you're picking up a pen from the floor. Pick it up. Even just this movement in your chair is helping your heart pump oxygen, which is energy, more efficiently to your muscles. Your muscles then pump that fresh blood and oxygen up to your brain, helping you think better, helping you feel better. Take a nice big breath in and close your eyes for a moment if you like. Give your eyes a break from the screen. Breathe in, reach up, breathe on out, and shake it on out there. Remember to take these little moments in your day to move your body. Do it when you're working on the computer, when you're on site, do them on your events. I'm Lizzie Williamson and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Please welcome Ken Holsinger, Senior Vice President Strategy at Freeman, in conversation with Andrea Doyle, Senior Editor at Skift Meetings.
Hi, everyone. I am here today with Ken Holsinger, who leads the data practice at global event agency Freeman, and to me is a true industry thought leader. What Ken does best is he makes data so easy to understand. And there was a time I would say I was data phobic, but thanks to Ken's help, that's no longer the case. Let's jump right in. So we are the first to hear about Freeman's latest attendee research. Can you touch upon, what that says and how audiences have changed and events have changed?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, thank you for your kind words, by the way. Thanks for having me. The report that we're doing is really a new launch of this year's events report, and we'll go through a few slides as we go through that. But in general, this just launched, and if they can share my screen for a second, I will walk through a few things here. We do a regular cadence of reports as we talked about, and as you've seen previously, Andrea, but this one is actually, I'm really proud to say, not only is this a premiere here at the Skift meeting, but that's one of our largest respondent pools to date. So a very large sample. And we're going to talk today a little bit about what I'm just referring to as NGEGs. In the industry, we have to have acronyms for things. So this is referring to next generation event goers. And that you'll see that as a theme throughout our data here today, that we're seeing a shift in who is coming to events. Prior to the pandemic, we saw, of course, Gen X was coming in strong. Boomers were the largest segment of the event attendee population. But as we look at all of the shifts that have happened during the Great Resignation and the reshuffle that we've talked about numerous times with you, Andrea, we just see a lot happening. Okay. And with that, we are seeing significant trend changes in what's happening with audiences. So this next generation we're talking about, prior to the pandemic, the average age was 51 years old that attended events in the US particularly. That has dropped, as you can see, significantly. As marketers, this should make us sit up and take notice to see a significant drop like this. And we think it'll drop even a little bit more. It's still staying the same stale and male, speaking as one of them. We're about 80% men attending most industry events before the pandemic. It actually increased a little bit with the accessibility of virtual, which is something we should all sit up and pay attention to. There were a lot more women and minorities, particularly with STEM events during the pandemic with virtual. And we've shifted back and kind of regained and actually gained a couple of points with women coming back. Some interesting things about the audience then is that it really, I kind of stack rank this in what we have seen over 17 waves of research that should help us kind of sift things out. One of the most common challenges I have when we talk to event planners is they'll say, yeah, but my audience is different than what you're talking about. They're different. They are a certain type of engineer or a certain type of manufacturing rep or a certain type of technology company. And the reality is we can learn a lot from what we've seen with these almost 2 million now, actually a little over 2 million attendees that we've researched over the past number of months. And there's a headline here, which is basically learn, of course, the unique things about your specific audience, but understand that the primary influencer is going to be their generation. Secondary influencer is going to be gender. And as you see the stack rank kind of go from there, it just kind of helps understand where we can lean on consumer trends versus just the kinds of things that we are focused on with the unique things first. We really can dig into what we can learn across marketing trends and apply just the specifics about the unique pieces of our industry and unique personality types to really help personalize the events. I know that's a lot to kick off, but it just kind of gives a perspective of where we're at and kind of where we're headed.
So the fact that the audience is trending younger is going to impact all aspects of the event industry. And I know we had touched upon just gender questions in general, how that has changed from a younger audience.
Yeah, we ask, of course, on every study. I think it's important, and frankly, not enough events do this, but we, of course, are asking demographic questions, because if we're going to measure things like DE&I, we need to understand. And one of the questions that most groups don't ask very well is the question of gender. Well, in this younger audience that we're seeing, we've seen from an almost immeasurable response of people that responded either other, so male, female, other, or binary, or non-binary, excuse me. And you can certainly get, depending on your audience, even deeper than that. But that overall pool has risen from almost immeasurable, less than 1%, to almost 4%. And a lot of people may look at that and go, that's not that much of a shift. That's a massive shift from a marketing standpoint, that all of a sudden, pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, we are shifting in our perspectives about a number of topics, including gender.
So this is something for companies to keep in mind as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion is concerned.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it bleeds over to topics like all of those, but also includes sustainability and other geopolitical or local political issues as well. All of these audiences are wanting to have those conversations, whereas our primarily boomer audience shied away from most of those topics.
Okay. And what does your data reveal about actual attendance versus the intent to attend?
So here's actual attendance, and you've followed me with this. We've done a few articles on this. So this is
not kind of all well received, because I did get some hate mail.
Yeah, well, people don't always like to be held up to a mirror, unfortunately. But here's where we're at. We've studied hundreds and hundreds of events and benchmarked. This is in-person attendance compared to 2019. Really, when we began the first phase of recovery, fall of 21 was about, you see about 52%. You see it growing, and we've slowed down from what would really be Q3 of last year to this data is closing through the end of December. So this closes out 2022 at 87% of previous. And that remaining 13% is not growing as quickly. And in fact, there's segments like healthcare, they're actually lagging quite a bit behind this number and pulling it down. But international is beginning to recover from where it was. We saw early on women weren't returning to in-person events. That's recovered to pre-pandemic norms. Even our verification rates of attendance versus registration have shifted back. Okay. But you can see a 3% increase between Q3 and Q4. I think it's time for us to really dig into a growth mode and get out of recovery mode, because this remaining audience we're going to need to go get. They're not just automatically going to come back. And while I'm thrilled with 87%, I'm sure there are those out there screaming, well, my event is 110%, and that's fantastic for you. But this is a blended average across large events in the industry.
Okay. What does this data tell us about how audiences are different today compared to pre-COVID?
Yeah, I think that there's a few things we can look at. I think some of it's they're younger. Some of it is kind of their preferences and priorities. I'll skip ahead a couple of slides here just for our time. For those that are screen capping quickly, I'll give you just a half a second here. But this is a major report, about 80 pages long. So I'm going to move ahead here. I think that the big thing that we saw, and I've shown this before in kind of a stack ranked priority, where people say, prior to the pandemic, they were focused on education and keynotes were the primary pieces. And as we've shifted and moved out, where we have both an online component as well as an in-person component, which we really didn't talk about prior to the pandemic, their priorities are shifting. So they're shifting things like education and keynotes to saying, you know what, I'd be fine with you streaming that, but I really want to focus on connection, networking in person. Right. And it even comes down to the way that they use vocabulary. We would say in the industry things like exhibits or networking, and the attendees come back and say, don't talk about virtual, don't talk about exhibits. Tell me about discovering new products and solutions. Talk to me about, instead of education, talk to me about learning and content. Instead of networking, talk to me about connection and community. So I think we need to really up our vocabulary as these things shift, and we see these priorities kind of splitting out in what people want from the various aspects of our events.
Okay. We talked about Emeralds and the fact that the company bought Advertising Week, and they kind of used a lot of the verbiage you just talked about and got it right. Can you just touch upon that quickly?
Yeah, I wrote an article that was basically saying, if you want to see what an event for millennials looks like, go to Advertising Week. And it's just basically looking at exclusivity, that really updating their marketing language. The experience itself was less about exhibits and classrooms, and a whole lot more about kind of weaving those things together. And we've been seeing that in the industry for a while, but if you have to label it a networking area or a classroom, you're probably not doing it right with a younger audience. That you really want to look at expanding out that vocabulary to say it's not about an exhibit, it's about an interaction between a buyer and a seller, and where can those things happen throughout the event. Now that sounds a little bit ethereal, but they broke that down quite well in the way that they came out with that.
Okay. I encourage the audience to please send in your questions. Although we don't have a whole lot of time, I will make sure we get them answered by Ken. But I had one last question. You talked about kicking Sally out. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so I think that as we look at what's happening with our audiences, Sally is a character that we've used for quite a while in the events industry, which is basically just stands for same as last year. And we, so much focus on just recovering and getting back to where we were. We need to focus on moving forward. And that means we've got to get rid of this mentality of rinse and repeat from last year, maybe innovate a little bit or add on to what we did last year. And I think that it's time for us to do a net zero planning cycle. What needs to be shared? What is resonating with our audience? What are they responding to? What are the trends telling us? And let's design an event experience that really reflects the audience, the current time and context of what we're doing, and build an experience based around that each year. Certainly there's going to be repeat elements, but just figuratively, let's kick out Sally. And I apologize to all the Sallys and the Karens of the world that have lost their their name, but hey, I've been dealing with the Ken and Barbie comparison for long enough to be okay with it.
So sayonara, Sally, but Sally in the events industry.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We had one quick question, and they just gave me 2 extra minutes. So,
Nice.
Kim Meyer just asked, what types of events did this study examine?
Well, first of all, hello, Kim. It's good to see you. He's been a friend for a long time. This studies across about I think it was around 102 events that were actually sampled here. They range from across the industry, from tech, healthcare, consumer, retail, manufacturing, but really the top 5 major event categories is where we focus. I will say that this actually focused, for Kim's sake, this actually focused heavily on consumer and retail in our sample this time, as we're kind of moving our samples across. But what we found is a great amount of similarity over numerous waves of research that we keep exploring new event segments. But larger events, typically over 1,000 in attendance across those primary 5 categories.
Okay. And a few of our attendees asked for a link to the report, and also where can they find the Advertising Week article you wrote?
Let me do this. The report is so new that it's not released yet. So I will get back with you, Andrea, and we'll publish that out with Miguel on LinkedIn when we have kind of a summary of the report. I am doing some in-person keynotes for it. In fact, I'm doing one here tomorrow in Alexandria at our offices. And then we'll be kind of moving out a few resources over the coming weeks. But look for the Freeman Event Report. It's our 2023 report, and we'll roll out from there.
Okay. And the link to the article you mentioned?
I send that out in an email. If you're interested, you can email me at ken.holsinger@freeman.com, and I'm happy to add you. It's called Insights for Your Inbox. I send it out every 2 weeks, and it's a data-driven insights email. The very, very basic plain text, what's happening in the industry, where the trends are at, and and I can certainly forward that article along at that point.
Okay. And, you say data, and like I said, there was a time I was a data phobe, but thanks to you, that's no longer the case. So I encourage everyone to check it out. Ken, as always, thank you so much for your time. I always leave our conversations knowing a little more than I did going in. And next up, we're talking about creating high-value experiences on a tighter budget, an important topic today. So please stick around.
Please welcome Yvonne DeFouria, Event Production Manager at WebEx Events, formerly Socio, in conversation with Angela Tupper, Branded Content Editor at Skift Meetings.
Hi again, everyone. I'm super excited to introduce you to Yvonne DeFouria, Event Production Manager for WebEx Events. She has tons of on-the-ground experience managing events, and she's going to tell us how the event planners of the future will be doing more with less. Thank you for joining us today, Yvonne.
Thanks so much, Angela. Happy to be here.
So before I jump into my questions, I just want to remind the audience that you can post your own questions in the chat, and a member of the WebEx Events team will follow up with some answers later. So Yvonne, we all know that budgets are getting tighter just as prices are going up. Business professionals often need to work that much harder to justify their attendance at events. And if I had to identify one thing that attendees want out of events more than anything else, it's that face-to-face, peer-to-peer contact with potential business partners. What can planners do to ensure that they're really delivering in that area?
Planners need to focus on the aspects of an event that you can't easily deliver on through a screen. So if you're going to host an in-person event, lean into being back in person and seeing people face to face. It helps to think about what we missed when we were separated during the pandemic, right? So for most, that was networking. Networking back in 2019 took place, after the sessions in large, dimly lit ballrooms, but that's not the networking that you're going to see at events in 2023. Planners should now consider, incorporating networking throughout their agenda. Encourage those coffee break conversations, have dedicated expo booth hours, and really have designated networking activities within the sessions. Attendees want to network with other attendees, of course, but also with your subject matter experts. And networking does not have to be a huge undertaking. As long as you're creating an environment where attendees are able to idea share, ask their questions, and meet industry peers, you're delivering on networking at your event.
Those are excellent points. Part of it's, you know, less is more sometimes, creating a bit more space in the agenda for those free moments of interaction while also having some structured ones. Those are great. And I mean, it's especially good because planners are forced to do more with less now, as we know, less budget,
Absolutely.
less staffing, and we're seeing it everywhere. We've covered the networking element really well, but what else can planners do to attract attendees to their events, considering all of these challenges?
It is all about personalized experiences now, and really for good reason. Attendees crave experiences that speak directly to them, especially now that in person events are soaring again. They don't want to
Mm,
just hear about our brands, they want to experience it. And it is our job as planners to constantly uplevel our events and keep a pulse on our attendees' needs. Attendees are looking for connection, collaboration, and networking opportunities, and they need to be easy and meaningful for them. We
mm,
as planners must consider how the industry has changed and meet our attendees where they are. And this applies to the content that we're delivering too. In fact, we learned that 64% of event industry professionals find it challenging to identify the right content to keep their
wow.
attendees interested and engaged.
Mm,
So, in order to create that right content and source the right speakers, you need to know your audience, right?
right.
You need to know what they're interested in, where they go for their information, and really what inspires them. This might sound like a big ask, but the easiest way to find out this information is to just ask them. You can
Yeah.
ask them in a survey that's sent out via social media or email. Or my favorite way is to use that registration tool, right? Make it work for you. That is an opportunity where you're able to gather all this attendee information and you can form groups or interest categories that can really help influence the sessions that you're going to be offering or your overall agenda. And
Mhm.
I've also found that leaning into your customer facing team is a fantastic way to incorporate anecdotal evidence into your event plans. This is the team with boots on the ground, and the
Right.
insights they're able to share with us as planners is invaluable. And the key to success, in this new world when we're doing more with less, is
Mhm.
giving your audience a voice, making them
Right.
feel heard while they're assisting you in creating the event that they actually want to attend.
I love that. You've got to ask your audience and you've got to, get the people on the ground to find out what it is that they want. So many good points there. Do you have any other tips for keeping the content as engaging as possible without having to invest in the most impressive lighting and screens?
Events are all about engagement, but based on a recent survey we conducted, 57% of event industry professionals find it challenging to garner attendee participation during engagement and collaboration activities.
Wow, more than
And
half.
this means that half of us are struggling to engage with our attendees while we're
Hmm.
delivering our amazing event content. And this may in turn have an impact on how our attendees feel, about the event, but also their likelihood of registering for next year's event. So, how are we going to combat this? First, we need to ask ourselves, how do we want attendees to experience our events? How should they feel? What should they get out of attending the event? And then I always suggest leaning into your event tech because let's face it, at this point, almost all in person events are using a mobile app.
True.
Event tech allows you to encourage audience participation with so many ways, but especially with Q&A and polling. So, whether it's native to your mobile app or you're integrating a third-party tool such as Slido, if you have a virtual audience, let them unmute and speak freely, or at an in-person event, use those IO mics and incorporate interactive elements whenever possible. So that can be gamification, photo booth, whiteboarding, networking tools. And I always like to mention, as important as it is to have different collaboration tools and opportunities, it is even more important to think out that entire experience. Plan
Mm,
out when it makes the most sense to use these tools so you can garner the most participation. So for example, gamification should be tied to the platform, agenda, speakers, sponsors. You can use it as a pre-event tool for app adoption or just to get to know a little bit more about the event and its location.
right.
And if you're going to incorporate a poll, make sure it's tied to the content or you'll be discussing it during the live event or doing something with that information. Don't just ask a question to check a box. Be intentional.
Hmm.
Asking the right question at the right time creates meaningful engagement.
Those are such great tips. You know, your mobile app is going to be a flat cost for the most part. Those things are not going to add much to the bottom line, if at all. And then also you want to be intentional. Don't just do it for its own sake. I also want to get to sponsors. So we all know that sponsors can help managing your costs, but they're also facing their own budgetary pressures these days. How can planners ensure that sponsors get enough value to make it worth their while?
We sent out a survey this past December, and it confirmed that 63% of event organizers said that budget constraints is the top event industry challenge they're facing in 2023. Budgets are always top of mind, right? As planners, that's like always the first conversation you have, budget, budget, budget. And here at WebEx Events, we're really no different. And for this reason, we have traded many services for sponsorships at our events, and I encourage you to do the same. So for example, we have a great relationship with a photo booth company. So for some of our past events, we've traded the use of their mobile app selfie booths in exchange for branding during our event. And while activations help create immersive experiences, they can also help with sponsorship and ROI. Events are now revenue drivers for sales. So why not capitalize on this and bring sponsors in on the fun? Right. You should encourage your exhibitors and sponsors to have activations by either requiring it, there are events out there who are doing that, or selling as a sponsorship, which helps with your budget and adds to the overall event experience. And activations, they really help foster those organic conversations, which everyone desires. Right. And I really can't think of exhibitor activations without thinking of some of the amazing booths that we saw recently at IMEX. One booth in particular stands out to me. It was a large hotel brand that has done a bit of a rebrand to be more in the health and wellness space. And the second I stepped onto their booth, I truly felt their brand. So picture, the busy show floor, and they had this, healthy treats were going to be delivered throughout the day. They had meditation pods and a quiet space. And it was just incredible. My team was able to take advantage of it. And even just for 10 minutes, we felt absolutely recharged and ready to go have those conversations. But being able to find that moment of peace and retreat on the show floor was invaluable. And I now associate health and wellness with that brand.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Yeah. And while activations are fun, and obviously that's the component you need to think of, but understanding that give and take and how to attract sponsors to your events and why they really would participate, that's the key to event success. And I really love that so many events are focusing on building these relationships and thinking about adding value for their sponsors because they are such a great partner.
Yeah, those are such great points. Those activations deliver value for the sponsor, but also for the attendee if it's done well, right? I want to know how planners can continue to deliver value and keep attendees engaged after the event is over.
This is something I am extremely passionate about. One of my favorite ways to keep the engagement going after the event is to focus on highlighting your event presence. We all spend so much time and money making these events come to life, so they really should outlive the couple of days of the event. And there are a few ways you can do this, but two come to mind for me. One we just did was actually our IMEX booth presence. We wanted to showcase being back in person in our beautiful booth and the branding we had. And we wanted to continue the conversation with the folks that we met or those who weren't able to make it to the show or to our booth. And we created this great video and we were able to share it through email and through our social channels. And this video was a piece of reusable content that was not only used for post-event promotion, but it also can be used as a sizzle reel for our future events. And video is a huge driver for post-event engagement. So if you're not already using video, highly recommend it. It's very engaging, gets lots of likes and clicks on social media especially. So that's been a great tool for us. And then the second one that comes to mind is we've recently created a FAQ blog. So we had an event and we just had so many questions, which is a great problem to have, but you just couldn't get to all of it during Q&A. And we were able to come up with this blog, and it not only acts as an informational piece of post-event content that can be reused, it's also such a great driver for the on-demand recording. And here at WebEx Events, we've found that our post-event promotion is arguably the most important part of the event strategy.
That's fascinating. I love those tips. Use video, capture those moments on the ground, and then also have FAQs to kind of divide it up into bite-sized components, drive more traffic to those longer videos. Those are really amazing tips. Thank you so much, Yvonne. I learned so much and you had so many great tips. Next up, we have a conversation about artificial intelligence, something everybody's been talking about lately. In particular, we're going to be talking about disrupting event marketing with artificial intelligence. Join us.
Please welcome Lisa Leary-Paris, Fractional Chief Marketing Officer at Axis Integrated Mental Health, in conversation with Miguel Neves, Editor-in-Chief at Skift Meetings.
Hello there, Liesl. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
It's nice to see you again, and it's nice to be back with my people.
Excellent. Great to have you with us. Liesl, you spent more than 20 years working in global sales and marketing. You've led corporate marketing functions at Mapbox, Hubelo, and TTC, and content marketing at SDL, with a particularly heavy emphasis on events. At SDL, you launched one of the first generative AI prototypes, the SDL Content Assistant. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that. I'm looking forward to exploring AI with you from both the user perspective and working in a company that developed an AI product.
Yeah.
So I think most people know about ChatGPT, the crazy craze about generative AI. They gained 1 million users in 5 days, a new record, and currently has more than 100 million users, including 13 million daily users. That's really come into the headlines. Has this surge in interest in AI surprised you, or is this something that you were expecting?
No, it was definitely something that we were expecting. And I mean, part of the reason that SDL had, SDL had actually had a long history in creating machine translation software. And they were, pretty dominant players for a long time. The reason that we went into this idea in the first place is that I was a single point of failure for the company as the head of content marketing. There just literally, there wasn't enough time in the day. There wasn't enough people that I could hire. It wasn't a, profitable idea to just keep hiring people to solve this problem. And so we were like, wait a minute, we have a generative, we have a machine translation model. Couldn't we just reverse engineer that and have it generate English instead of having it generate all of these other languages? So we began exploring that idea with our engineering team, and they were like, we don't understand. Why do you want to do this? It doesn't take that long to create content, does it? Ha, ha, ha. It's, like every client you ever have, right? And so that's when we started. And the first prototype was very, very, very simple. But the idea, well, as you can see now, it's, I think ChatGPT was recently valued at $27 billion. So obviously we were onto something back then, but, this is a common challenge, I think, for everyone, just creating enough content. And even especially for event marketers, because event content is also content, right? And so it's one of the most time-consuming things in every marketing organization. As somebody who's gone from managing large corporate enterprise marketing teams to, a marketing team of one, which is me for the company I own now, I can't do my job without AI.
Perfect. So just to kind of make sure I understood that correctly, you're working at SDL and they have an AI translation tool, or they're using AI for translation.
Yep.
And you actually were part of the team that decided, hey, why don't we use AI to help us create content?
Correct.
Much to how ChatGPT now can help, event planners and event marketers.
Correct. And actually, so it's funny how all of this comes together, because, at the time we're like, okay, we need a whole new content campaign. We need some thought leadership. And I'm like, right, the 5 future states of content. So I actually wrote the 5 future states of content predicting generative AI 3 years ago. And in fact, that thought leadership campaign ended up becoming not just the content campaign of the year for the company, but it ended up becoming the product roadmap for the company. So each of those stages of the 5 future states of content became a product that they began developing. And generative AI, SDL Content Assistant, was one of the things that they had started creating right away because of the potential for it. And tragically, the only reason that we didn't continue with it is that a big driver of this project, on top of, as well as myself, was my boss. And unfortunately, she died right after we launched it.
That's a shame. Sorry to hear that. But I wanted to get a little bit of insight from the audience. If you're watching and you've used ChatGPT, just write something in the chat to let us know that you're using it, or something you like about it, something you dislike about it. Let us know. Thumbs up, thumbs down. You love it, you hate it. I'm definitely experimenting. We wrote an article about it recently, and I really tried to experiment with different ways of using it. But can you go into a little bit of details, Liesl, about the different ways that you're using ChatGPT or other AI for events and event marketing?
Lots of ways. Okay. And one of the things I'm going to challenge people to do also is that, a lot of people just think you can use ChatGPT to create content, but actually I use ChatGPT as a way to generate ideas. And so, yes, and a big part of this, like if everybody here on this meeting doesn't have a file already of like great ChatGPT prompts, you should start one, because
okay, so explain to us, why are prompts so important?
Sure. What you tell the AI is extremely important, and it has capabilities beyond. You can say to it, okay, generate a blog post about these things, or you can feed maybe a PowerPoint presentation like content into it and say, summarize all of this into a blog. You can tell it to generate content. That's totally fine. But what I actually really enjoy telling the AI to do is to pretend to be somebody. So for instance, I will actually tell the AI, pretend that you are my target audience, whoever that is, C-levels, right? Whoever you want at your event. Have a conversation with me about the topics that are most relevant to you. It will come up, it will search the entire internet and tell you everything that's actually important to that particular audience or persona, and you'll get a lot of ideas of how to connect to that audience. It'll come up with a content plan. You can actually, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll put a bunch of keywords that I have on my, this is where having my own business has also been really helpful, because, there's different dynamics in play, but one of the things I'm most concerned about is SEO for my business. And so I'm constantly putting in, keywords and saying, cluster these topics for me so that I can generate, more traffic for my website. And I'll ask ChatGPT to do that. But you can tell the prompt, you can say, hey, prioritize controversial issues in this industry for recommendations on content. And so there's just a lot more that you can do with a ChatGPT search than you can with a Google search. And so it's really important to get really creative and really start learning about these prompts and what you can direct the AI to do, so that you can generate all of these ideas and pick out the best ones.
Yeah, I think prompts are so important. I've actually seen lots of people now sell prompts or sell kind of collections of prompts, and it's becoming a thing, like an AI prompt generator. Now, how's that for a job title, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's true, but I mean, we're so used to really looking at things in a really binary way, and when you're talking to an AI, it's so much more robust than just one single command. You can command it to do a lot of things and prioritize certain things and prioritize other, not. The other thing I love doing with Chat GPT prompts is making sure that they actually put it in a table format. So, or I'll be like, oh, I forgot, I want another column that talks about this, and it'll just add another column, and so it saves me a lot of time on formatting personally.
Love it. So I'm just looking through the audience comments, and mostly positive. A few concerns. It may not be accurate, but I wanted to address one thing that's kind of interesting, and maybe you have a comment on this, Liesl. Emily Blitz says, we are worried that it will make identifying authentic research abstracts submitted to medical conferences incredibly difficult. Is that a genuine concern? How do you think about that, Liesl? If you were helping a medical association figure out which abstracts are worth doing or not, of course you have medical professionals doing the actual checking. How do we address that with generative AI?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, as someone who goes to medical conferences myself, I definitely think that there's definitely a lot of challenges in terms of finding out what's real and what's not. Obviously people have to, you need to do your research. One of the things I'm going to say straight up, which I think is a real concern, is that AIs are racist. And people don't realize that. But the data that trains an AI is actually biased in and of itself. And so, for instance, here's an example of this, right? If you were to ask ChatGPT, tell me what the top 10 albums of all time are. Most likely it's going to come up with a list of, like, actually I saw this the other day. It was like a list of, white men. And, part of that is because that's probably the most album sales, and there's cultural factors to that and whatnot. So, I really think that it's a great place to start. Like, AI is a great place to start, but you need people to really come in and just say, this is real, this is not real, or introduce something completely different. And and that's why I think diversity is also a real important thing just in general. Yeah. In anything you do. Really. But understand that there's a bias to your AI regardless of whether or not it has human feelings or not. The bias,
just like there's a bias on the internet, right? So
correct.
A lot of times picking up the bias from the internet. What's
actually training the AI sometimes matters, and a lot of times they're being trained on the internet. And so be careful with that.
So another question from the audience, Andrik Muller has a question, says, with more and more people using AI for content, how do you see it affecting unique creativity? I think this is really a question about, it's great for thought starters, it's great for ideas, but what about creativity? Is that going to be, I guess, worth more or more unique? Or is that kind of getting muddled up?
I actually think that there is going to be, the more unique you are, the more creative you are, there is going to be more of a premium on that, because if you can actually break out from what's already there, and the bar is so much, lower now, because everybody can just create some, baseline content, right? I mean, I do it all the time. I don't actually. There's somewhat of a moral panic that's going on right now where people are like, oh my God, that is lazy marketing. And I'm like, no, that's just marketing. That's marketing at scale. Okay. But if you really want to, really be exceptional, this was always true. You do need to have depth of knowledge. You have to have creativity. And I think the more creative people are, the more valuable they're going to be, because they're going to catch people's attention, because there's so much more content now that's being created.
Absolutely. So I wanted to bring up a comment also Martin Sirk had. The whole abstract model is going to need a major overhaul, but associations have a great opportunity to become even more trusted authenticators of content. And I think that kind of is what you were saying.
That's exactly right. Because anybody can create anything, right? So domain authority for your websites becomes that much more important. You have to get really super good now at making sure that you're giving backlinks to the right people, and you're getting backlinks from the right people to increase your domain authority, and you're not just linking to any content.
Great. So just wanted to cover one more question or one more thing with you, if you don't mind. We've talked a little bit about ChatGPT. We have this kind of generative AI that's very much like a chatbot and helps with written content, essentially. What are the other platforms, or if you can name a few other platforms or types of uses of AI, could be generative or not, that you think can be really good for event marketers and event professionals?
Yeah, I actually have been playing a lot with the image generators, and again, this is
anyone in particular.
I was playing with Starry AI the other day, and actually, even just nowadays, if you go to Shutterstock or you go to any of the major stock photography places, they actually have generative AI built into their platforms. And okay, I'm going to caveat this by saying sometimes these are weird. Again, people, you need to look at your stuff. Do not let an intern go through your content and edit it and make sure it's all right. I mean, you guys really do need to make sure it's real. I'm in the mental health space now, so like I will start blogs on Copy AI, for instance. If I can't get into ChatGPT, Copy AI is like my other go-to writing platform. But if, I still need to read through all of it, because sometimes it will come up with stuff and I'm like, that's not real. Sounds convincing, but that's definitely not a mental health illness that people have. But like I was actually trying to find images for my website. And of course you want to have, unique images and whatnot, but like, sometimes I have to say, like with Shutterstock, I look at the images and I'm like, that is not something I would use on my website. But it does give you good ideas of what you're looking for in other, stock photography or whatever. What I personally like is what you did the other day, Miguel. You actually went and what was the platform you used to generate the future of
that was Midjourney.
Yeah, Midjourney. That's right. Yeah, I've used Midjourney as well. And so one of the things that's really actually hard to find in stock photography back when I was running corporate teams is actually group shots. So if you're taking like if there are any event photographers out there, if you can actually secure rights to take big event shots and whatever, there's actually a lot of money in that, because a lot of times you have to get permission slips, you have to get consent, you have to just getting group shots is just expensive, hard, logistically difficult. So that's the reason that all of us use the same stock photography for events because it's actually, there's very few of those. So using the AI generators to actually go and create like these, event shots with, anonymous people is actually a great use of some of that stuff. So, and also like, what? Go ahead. Well, I was just saying,
I can see a lot of event planners and event marketers that are watching kind of saying, yep, I'm missing a few shots for that. So if it can generate those, I'm sure that'll be a great use of it.
Exactly. And then it's unique to you. It's part of your brand, and you can direct it however you want to direct it. The other thing I was saying too is that, if you want to kind of get an idea of the look and feel of your event before you actually do the event, spend the money on it, that's a great way to generate ideas as well. I mean, I think people should start thinking of AI less about content generation and more about idea generation, and then using your own creativity, your judgment, your experience to hone it down to something that is unique to you and valuable to your client.
Love that. I think that's a great place to end. And I think a lot of the audience members will appreciate that. So it's not about the final product, but really a Kickstarter and a way to generate ideas and to generate images. Liesl, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great chatting with you, and thank you for sharing your insights on generative AI.
Thank you.
So next up, we are taking a closer look at holograms. But first, let's take a short wellness break led by Lizzie Williamson of 2 Minute Moves. Enjoy.
Event props, it is wonderful to be here with you on the future of the event industry. Now, what do we tend to do when we start to feel a bit tired in our day? We go for that third cup of coffee or sugary snack to keep us going, but that puts us on this energy roller coaster ride. What we want to do instead is get our bodies moving. And that's what we're going to do right now for 2 minutes with this Energizer break. We're going to start by having a nice little warm up of your feet. Bring one heel up, then the other heel up. Nice little massage there. Nice stretch out the back of your legs and also your feet. Good one to remember at the end of a big day. Now you're going to turn this into a walk. When you walk, there's a study by Stanford University that shows that compared to sitting, it increases creative output by 60%. That's because of all the brain chemicals that get released. And those creative juices continue to flow after you sat back down. Let's start to go a little bit faster, like you're on really hot sand there. Go, 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 go. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Yes. Go as fast as you can for 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's have a punch now. Punch. Move that whole body through with the punch. Much better thing to do than sending off that angry email. Usually punch it out. Let it out. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's punch to the side and the other side. You do a little bend of your knees if you want to, sticking your hips back. Bit faster, go. Yes. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Have another little walk. Start to imagine that you've had a hard day. You drop your shoulders on. Now pull your shoulder blades, squeeze them back towards each other. This is sending a signal to your brain that you're in this open, confident state of mind. A good little trick. Let's go a little bit faster again, like the ground's really hot. Let's boost serotonin, our feel-good hormone, which helps counteract cortisol, our stress hormone. So great for us to take these little micro movement breaks. Let's take a little breath in, get your breath back, breathe in, hold that breath in, and breathing on, out. Hope you enjoyed that little moment to get your body moving. I'm Lizzie Williamson, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.
The most memorable part of presenting by hologram was being able to be here in Toronto and then engage live with that audience in Whistler. The latency was near zero. I would absolutely use this technology again, and I would recommend it to my network of speakers. It is a way that you can really extend your presence beyond a Teams call or a Zoom call. This is immersive. The audience feels connected to you, engaged, and you can hear them, you can see them. It is truly a different experience.
I hope this sparks some meaningful discussion for the rest of the conference. So please enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you so much for having me.
Please welcome Andrew Dorka, Senior Vice President, Sales and Strategy at ART, in conversation with Angela Tupper, Branded Content Editor at Skift Meetings.
Hi again, everyone. I'm here with Andrew Dorcas, Senior Vice President of Sales and Strategy for Art Media. And as you just saw in that video, it's a company that specializes in holograms for business meetings and events. Skift itself has had a chance to try out this tech. Our CEO, Rafat Ali, now knows what it's like to speak both as and to a hologram. He first beamed in for the ICCA conference as a speaker and later interviewed Chris Nassetta, CEO of Hilton, for Skift Forum Dubai. Now, of course, we know a little bit about this tech, but Andrew is the real expert here. So thank you for joining us today, Andrew.
Thank you, Angela. It is an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Before I jump into my questions for Andrew, I just want to let the audience know that the ART team will answer any questions you leave in the chat. So Andrew, I think a lot of people might be intimidated by the idea of using a hologram to beam a speaker in, but it sounds like the tech has really become a lot more user-friendly over the last few years. Can you take us through the setup on both the speaker side and the conference stage side?
Yeah, absolutely. And the intimidation, hopefully I can set some minds at ease there. We've been doing this since 2014. We're the leaders in live holograms with the most extensive display lineup in the marketplace, from in-person and virtual. And it was an honor actually to work with you guys as well as with Andrew on that video. I'll share with you essentially, hopefully you can see my screen there. The display, there's two sides of it. There's the capture, which is where we create the hologram, and then the display, which is where it's visible to the audience. On the left-hand side there, not only do we have a capture of what you saw in the video, but that is what a typical green screen studio looks like. And I also took a bird's eye view of what the presenter's view would look like. You can see there's a confidence monitor there. There's an audience monitor, so they can interact, whether that's a host, a moderator, a panel discussion, or a wide view of the audience, or even a tighter view of the audience. Teleprompter is an option, so there's just basically whatever you're looking for. They can present their slides directly from that studio, and it can stream directly into the iMag screens or whichever on an event. So on the right-hand side is the display. That's where Andrew becomes the hologram. He can see and hear in real time. It's ultimately transmitting at 0.3 seconds,
wow.
Which is real time. Takes me longer to think about an answer than and we're very fortunate. We have 30 studios that have our art engine, which is really the software that helps us power this 0.3 seconds. We have 30 studios worldwide that allow event planners, AV agencies, et cetera, to rent those from us. And we can beam amazing people to amazing audiences internationally.
Cool. So these green screen studios are set up in 30 locations worldwide. What if you wanted to set up your own? Would that be possible?
Absolutely. And we do rent that service as well. But many of our clients, especially since the pandemic, have actually installed a lot of their own studios for virtual events, et cetera, which we use ours for those as well as a part of our lineup.
That's awesome. And it's so cool that he's getting captured and also can see the audience at the same time.
Yeah.
So I've heard that there are different options. What are the options and what are the prices involved with each of them?
Yeah, as you can see, here's a sampling of different ones that we've got that are in action, whether it's a smaller conference, tech conference, or a large interactive conference. We've got lots of solutions. And here's our art collection. The example that we had with Andrew Au in Vancouver, beaming in from Toronto, was the art screens. It's a projection-based solution that is projected onto a transparent mesh. The mesh captures the hologram image, and it's transparent behind it, and it creates the illusion that the hologram is essentially standing on stage. That's a great solution for large conferences and events where we have ambient light controls. Right. The second option here is the Art Capsule. Art Capsule is an interactive touch LCD screen. It's an all-in-one solution, and it allows you to do pre-record or live content, and you can beam in live. That's really essentially what we're known for at the core. But Capsule offers so much more, and it's great for trade shows or experiential marketing activations, and can allow you to really create some fun and memorable moments. The third one is our virtual solution. This was very, very popular during the pandemic, but we can bring up to 5 different individuals from 5 different studios onto a common stage, and they can interact live and in real time, and then that gets streamed out through event streaming platforms similar to what we're experiencing here with StreamYard. Wow. And then it's all powered through those studios. And again, we have 30 of those around the world. You can rent them, or we can set them up on site at your location and ultimately beam people to any of our displays.
Amazing. So much flexibility. And I guess that the mesh one is good for low situations where the control of the lighting, because you want a dark background behind it, but the capsule will work well if you don't have that kind of control because it's backlit. So right. That makes so much sense. And in terms of pricing, what are we looking at?
Yeah, we're looking at an end-to-end. So I know we have an international audience here. I'll just speak in US dollar terms. We're looking at $25,000 from an end-to-end solution that includes the display, the capture studio itself, as well as the live transmission. And we provide that all as a turnkey solution to event planners and AV companies all around the world.
Amazing. This is such exciting tech. Thank you so much, Andrew. I really learned a lot. For our next session, our final session of the day, we're learning more about how Google is investing in the power of joyful, multisensory event experiences. You don't want to miss this.
Please welcome Megan Henschel, Global Events Strategic Solutions Lead at Google, in conversation with Andrea Doyle, Senior Editor at Skift Meetings.
Hey, Megan.
Hi, it's so good to see you.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me. So for those who don't know, Megan is the Event Strategic Solutions Lead at Google, and she's definitely a rock star in the events industry. Google's taken a collaborative approach to rethinking event design, and this approach brings together experts from lots of different parts of the world, specialists in a wide variety of areas. You've talked about Google's Experience Institute, XI, before, but this has now evolved, and your event starts next week in New York City. Can you take us back to the beginning?
Yeah, sure. I'll try to tell what is a very long and sordid story in a minute. So XI started, the Experience Institute started in the summer of 2020, after we had all collectively gone through this period of triage, right, in our industry.
Right.
And I had gotten really curious about what lasting effects the pandemic and work from home and digital transformation should have on our industry and how we show up as designers. And so I collected 3 or 4 people at Google, and we started researching secretly, quietly, in broad swaths. And then as we started to share what we were finding with more people, and then more people, and then more people, momentum grew. And we knew that we would have a much better chance of navigating all the uncertainty that we were faced with at the time if we formed a really diverse coalition around it.
Okay.
So when we started and formally launched in 2021, we were very much looking at what could the future of the industry look like? And now, almost 2 years into the work and leading into our first inaugural event next week, which blows my mind. I can't believe we're here. We're far more interested as a community in what the future of our industry should be, and how we, as this collective, this community of practice, might drive toward the right futures for both our industry and for our audiences.
Okay. So you've taken such a wide-ranging approach in working with different specialists on this event and in general. Why do you think this was needed, and what did they uniquely bring to the table?
Yeah, honestly, I can't take credit. I didn't know it was needed initially. We had a very small cohort of people out of the gate, but the universe pushed us in the right direction, or maybe I should credit LinkedIn here. It's been really organic. We did an open call for people who were doing cool things in the domain of human experience. We ended up collecting a really diverse group of people around the world doing beautifully disruptive stuff that go way beyond corporate events. And I think as we started to talk to more and more people who were outside of our bubble and outside of our industry, we started to see that people are looking at things more holistically now. And the last 3 years have been sort of a time of collective discovery and maybe collective remembering about how all of this stuff, all the parts of our lives are really interdependent. And the lives are blurring across work and life and play and community and our social lives. And if that's true, if people are doing less compartmentalizing, then we as experience designers should also be more holistic in our approach to designing experiences. We can do things that both honor business, but also humanity. And so we've been comparing our process a lot to alchemy.
Okay.
And we're combining elements and getting really speculative and experimental in order to try to create, experiential gold.
Okay. And one of the areas you have pioneered, and we've talked about it many times for Skift meetings, is neuro inclusion with the new project. How can planners benefit from learning about neuro inclusion? And can you just touch upon, why it's important to you and, events in general?
Yeah. Well, I'll start on a personal note. My son is autistic. He's almost 5. His name is Otis, and he is perfect in every possible way. But we also have acknowledged that a likely future, we believe, and one that we want to support, is the actualization of the authentic self. So a future where we move from bringing your whole self to work, moves from performative to like reality, right? And Gen Z is making huge strides in pushing us toward that future. But as we looked as designers at supporting that with what we do and designing for a spectrum of full personhood, we noticed a gap around neurodiversity and inclusion. And I don't think I would have noticed it as quickly had it not been for my beautiful son. But there was certainly something that there was a gap in our industry. We didn't really have good education and enablement targeted to us for us to use. And so after doing a bit of an audit and talking to a lot of people, talking to a lot of neurodivergent people within Google and without, we decided that we felt really called and really responsible to build it. And so that's what the new project is. And, talking to the benefits of applying neuroinclusion, I could rattle off a lot of data points about why belonging matters and why representation matters. But I'll just say that whenever I present the new project to new groups, I often start by asking people in the audience to raise their hands if they themselves or someone that they love is neurodivergent. That's autistic, ADHD, OCD, Tourette's, sensory processing differences. Hands always go up in every room. Right. We're surrounded by neurodivergent people. We work and live and they're in our families. We interact with them every day. And I always say the new project is a love letter to you. And then I ask questions about how many times have you been in an event, or have you ever been in an event where you've disappeared into the bathroom to look at your phone to just have a moment of rest and recovery, right? Every hand goes up. How many times have you been in an event and you've Googled a word that someone said because they weren't using simple language that was easy to understand? Almost every hand goes up. And so then I say, the new project is also for you. It's for everyone. The potential for curb cut effects and for creating more welcoming, loving spaces for everyone by accommodating neurodivergent people, it's literally limitless.
Okay. Because like we've talked about just having a room at a trade show where people could just go to chill for a little while. And that's a wonderful space for just about anyone, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. we're going to be testing a lot of different resilience and recovery spaces at our event next week, sort of deployed in different configurations and inviting people to engage with them in different ways. So we're going to learn a lot about, what gets most utilized and what feels most helpful, but everyone uses those spaces and everyone can benefit from them.
Right. Okay. And talking about your event next week, from the outside, it looks like you're bringing together many of the collaborators to have a unique joint experience. What are you hoping to achieve with this event? And how will it impact the events you plan at Google?
Great question. So we wrote a manifesto back at the beginning of 2022. And part of that manifesto is there's no way you could possibly test experience on paper alone. And so XI Days really is the culmination of 2 years of research, development, testing, but we're bringing people in to test and prototype in real life, in physical space and together. So next week, we'll literally write the next chapter of our story as a community. And we're going to be testing a lot of possible futures, all backed by data and backed by a lot of the prototyping we've done thus far. But we're asking this community of, very diverse experienced professionals for lots of feedback. And that feedback will inform where we prioritize the rest of this year and where we go from there. I'm fully prepared to walk into next week and for some of my assumptions to be wrong, and for some of the things that I want to be true to not be true. And I think that's the beauty of the way that we've approached this work. I think my biggest goals for next week are to inspire collaboration within this community, to spark new ideas for how we can show up differently, and maybe even shift some mindsets or paradigms for our industry where we really should be moving in a different direction. And as far as how that impacts events at Google, we've already been prototyping some of this stuff here and there in some of our larger event venues. But I think next week we'll really validate the things that matter and that we should look to implement or invest in at scale. So question mark, I'll report back later, but all the data we get will certainly inform a roadmap forward.
Do you have any takeaways that you think planners will benefit from next week? Any predictions that you could share with us?
Yeah. So so predictions, I don't want to give too much away. And I certainly don't want to share these possible futures before we know if there's agreement on the fact that they will be futures. But what I will say is one of the first things that we blew up in our experimentation were silos and gatekeeping. If we were going to do this thing called XI, I wanted it to be open to the industry, and I wanted us to share the things that we were learning and finding and share the people that we were meeting, because we have so much access to cool people in this community. So we're going to be doing a post-event case study. All of that will be fully externally available. We're working on a website for that, but for now, everything being shared, I'm posting on my personal LinkedIn. You can reach out to me and I can drop it to you. But yeah, we're going to be fully reporting out, complete transparency, sharing a lot of the data. And that way we all learn from it, not just those of us at Google. One exciting thing that people can do during the event next week, if they're interested, is the new project is going to be partnering with Nowhere, which is a metaverse company. So I'm going to be dropping a link on my LinkedIn where you can come into this metaverse environment, learn about the new project, and we're actually going to be partnering with them to build a virtual world that reflects neuroinclusion. I think one of the really amazing things about this type of technology is it allows us to do things in a virtual space that we could never possibly do in real life at scale. We're never going to have those kind of budgets in 2023. So we're going to intake feedback from around the world. We're going to understand what sorts of public social spaces feel most special to people and use that to inform design. We'll test that using the metaverse, and then hopefully that will help inform IRL, physical space design, and environmental programming design in the future.
Wow, that's amazing. And people could get that link on your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, it's open to anyone, anywhere. I'm going to be posting about it probably tomorrow.
Okay.
And I can certainly share that with you too, Andrea.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely push it out. We had a question from the audience. It is that, you're listening to Megan, has this percolating in the theater of my mind. Diversity is about counting people. Inclusivity is making every person count.
Preach, Susan. Preach. Yeah. So we often say, like, and the design, we're taking a lot of risks in the design for next week. Some of them could fail epically. Like one day we don't have an agenda. People just come and navigate these experiences on their own time, in their own way. So that means we're not going to have critical mass. At some points throughout the day, there may only be a handful of people in our entire event venue. We're comfortable with that. We'll see how that goes. But what we keep saying is you can't design something for everyone, but within what you design, everyone should be reflected. You should think about everyone in your design. There should be something for everyone. And I think that's the best we can aspire to. Susan, I think that's really beautiful sentiment.
So we have time for one more question, but what I do want to tell the audience is I'm going to gather your questions and share them with Megan, so then we could get the answers to all the questions. One question from Angela B is how and when will the data outcomes be shared from next week?
Great question. I need a few days off. This event is basically my second child, so I'm going to take a little break, but I'm thinking probably toward the end of March. We're going to work quickly because we're also going to be sharing this with our attendees, and we're going to be doing an open event debrief where it's not just the core team, anyone can come. So that's also going to be interesting. So I would say late March, early April, but I'll certainly keep you all posted on LinkedIn.
Okay, I'm going to sneak in one other question. Christine asked, what's the difference between creating a quiet space versus an isolating space?
I've never heard it worded quite that way, but it's a good question. So I can tell you how we're differentiating resilient spaces, and I'll go quick. We have a fully quiet space. Only one person can go in there at a time. The quiet space is sensory controlled. We have a lot of accommodations, physical artifact accommodations in the space, fidgets, sound canceling headphones. They can control the light. They can control the sound. They can control the scent. We also have Nook pods that are these modular units that can be set up. Those are really only suited for 1 to 2 people at a time. So that could be more of an isolating space. We also have something we're calling our liminal lounge, which is open. Many people can be in that space, but it's little to no talking. And we have books and magazines and little things scattered around the space. So you're still in the action, but is intentionally marketed as a space where you go, you unplug, you look at Instagram, and it's a bit of a moment. So that's what we're trying next week.
So I am honored to say that I'll be attending next week's Google X. It's Google's XI Days or Google's XI event.
It's XI Days, and
Days.
XI stands for the Experience Institute.
Okay, and it starts on February 28th.
It does.
And like I said, I'm honored to have the opportunity and looking forward to seeing you in New York next week.
I can't wait to see you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure. I'm really honored to be here.
Well, you're such an inspiration, and thank you for all you do, Megan. I'm now going to be joined by my colleagues, Miguel and Angela, to talk about what our key takeaways from today were.
Hello, everybody. So this is it. We're coming right to the end. So thank you for sticking with us. There's just the 3 of us now. And I thought we could just gather our thoughts and share a little bit of what we've really learned from this event. This is the end of the Future of the Event Industry Virtual Summit. And I hope we delivered on our promise of a future thinking event with expert practitioners sharing their best advice and how to envision the future of the meetings and events industry. So I want to grab some impressions from my 2 colleagues that have been helping me moderate this event. I'm going to start with Angela. Angela, top takeaways, anything that really stood out for you that you learned today that maybe surprised you or impressed you?
I mean, I think holistically, my feeling is that we're at a time of real disruption, disruption of the status quo. So the pandemic shut down the in-person event industry, and that made us realize just how important the in-person experience is, but it also gave us a chance to rethink it and be more intentional about it and more inclusive and designing really memorable experiences, but ones that also take everyone into account. And then at the same time, it was an opportunity for people to become more familiar with tech, for the tech itself to accelerate in terms of its development. And now we're also seeing some really just amazing changes happening seemingly overnight. I know it's been in development for years, but with AI. So it's just so many things are changing right now. I know that event planners are facing a lot of challenges as well, but I think it's a really exciting time.
Fascinating. Thank you for that. Andrea, wanted to get your impressions as well. What stood out for you?
Well, I agree with what Angela said. The event industry is back, but like Ken said, attendance isn't where, for big events, it's not exactly back to where it was pre-pandemic, but although events are back, they look different. So with AI, with neuro inclusion, we're not, we've evolved as an industry, and it's so exciting to be part of it and to cover it for Skift meetings.
Love it. Thank you so much. I learned a lot from Eric. First session we did. I really liked the way that he just focused on the reasons for having an event and what we're looking to change. And of course, the AI conversation I had with Liesel, understanding how AI can really help start ideas and spark conversations, I think were really useful. So thank you so much, Andrea and Angela, for sharing your thoughts. I'm going to wrap up. This concludes the 2023 edition of the Future of the Event Summit. I hope you enjoyed the experience. I'm seeing a lot of great comments on the chat, so thank you so much for those. Remember that there is a survey coming out, so please do answer that survey. There are a few, just 6 or 7 questions, and they're very easy, multiple choice. So please do give us your feedback. Super helpful. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily or weekly newsletter, download our reports, sign up for future events. It's all on our website. If you sign up for our newsletter, you won't miss any of that. And I'd like to thank our sponsors once more that make it possible for us to run these events at no cost. Please visit WebEx Events, formerly Socio, Kaltura, and Art in their brand showrooms on our website. Thank you, DJ Graffiti, for kicking us off and for sticking around. I see you in the comments, so really appreciate you sticking around. I know you're also an event professional, so it's great to have you with us. And Lizzie Williamson for making us get up and move. It's always fun to do that. Thank you to my team, both the other moderators that you've just seen and also the people behind the scenes, Jose, Edenair, Colette, Gianna, Lori, Anna, so many different people that are making this happen behind the scenes. So I really appreciate them. Thank you very much to you for being with us. Take care of yourself, and I hope to see you again at future Skift Meetings events. So signing off for the evening, my name is Mikael Neves. I'm the editor-in-chief of Skift Meetings, and I wish you an awesome rest of your day.